These for dangerous assimilation, scapegoating, identity dissolution, and the compulsion to fix represent the unintegrated fate of the person who sees too much. This rare psychological capacity will either destroy you through overwhelm and social exile, or it must be consciously integrated and transformed. But how does one integrate a perception that is already too powerful? How do you maintain consciousness without being annihilated by the unconscious world? The answer lies not in more psychological analysis, but in a radical shift of view of timeless wisdom that addresses the source of the suffering. The creation of the story of me in collision with the world. This wisdom does not tell you to see less. It tells you to see wiser. It is here, at the peak of psychological exhaustion, that the profound yet simple remedies of Buddhist philosophy provide the roadmap out of the crisis, transforming the mirror of pain into a vessel of peace. The entire psychological burden of the perceptive individual can be understood through the lens of one crucial metaphor: the invisible armor. Imagine that every single perceived slight, every careless word, every act of betrayal or thoughtless omission you encounter automatically attaches a piece of invisible, heavy armor to your chest. When a friend forgets your birthday, you don't just register the fact. You assign intent. They deliberately made me feel unimportant. A piece of self-pity armor is added. When a colleague gives a harsh critique, you don't hear the feedback. You hear the unconscious message: they are trying to publicly humiliate me. A piece of resentment armor is added. When you scroll through social media and see lives that seem perfect, you instantly conclude, my own efforts are small and insufficient. A piece of self-loathing armor is added. This armor is not placed upon you by the outside world. It is assembled by your own highly sensitive, highly personalized reaction to the world. It is the weight of all the personalized stories you create about the empty spaces in others' intentions. The armor grows so thick and heavy that you can no longer bend, no longer breathe deeply. And you become trapped in a state of perpetual defensiveness, always anticipating the next blow. This realization is the bridge between Jung's descriptive psychology and Buddhist prescriptive practice. Jung details the mechanism of the psychological wound, the why you are so exposed. Buddhist wisdom provides the disassembly instructions to how to stop building the armor. The core Buddhist teaching is that dukkha suffering arises from clinging, craving, and the highest wisdom is anat, non-self. When you feel the sharp pain of being scapegoated, when you feel the fire of anger rising, you are clinging fiercely to a personalized narrative. I am being personally wronged. I am the victim in this story. The practice, therefore, is to withdraw the psychic energy and the personalized, meaning you inject into the interaction. The psychological attack shadow projection is only effective because you accept the personalized story it offers. The colleague who critiques you harshly is likely doing so because they are drowning in their own stress, fear of failure, or unresolved envy. The attack is merely a symptom of their own internal chaos, a reflection of their unlived life, as Jung might say. The attack is empty of specific, targeted, malicious intent against the core of who you are. It is simply an event arising from external causes and conditions. The wisdom of non-personalization is the recognition that you are not the target. You are simply in the line of fire of someone else's suffering. The warrior who wears the visible armor believes they need it for protection. But in truth, it is the armor itself that prevents them from finding peace. To dismantle it, the highly perceptive individual must master the first noble truth of perception. The pain of the collision is real, but the suffering is optional. The perception of the external event is inevitably will still see the dysfunction, the lie, the resentment. But the suffering, the piece of armor you add, comes from the self-inflicted action of making it about you. This leads directly to the core Buddhist remedy for external conflict, stopping the armor assembly. The practice is to pause in the moment of perceived collision and perform a conscious act of differentiation. When the impulse to personalize, to blame, or to react rises, you ask yourself, am I witnessing an attack? Or am I witnessing a suffering mind expressing itself poorly? If I remove the story of I am being targeted, what remains? Often, what remains is the simple observation of another human being's fear. Ignorance or pain is simple, raw fact of existence, empty of personal malice. When you consciously withhold the psychic energy required to form the personalized narrative, the armor piece cannot attach. This technique of non-personalization is the foundation for overcoming the scapegoat phenomenon. When the group attempts to project their shadow onto you, they are essentially trying to hand you a piece of their psychological baggage. If you refuse to take it, if you refuse to personalize the accusation, the baggage falls to the ground. The perceptive person must develop the conscious skill to see the shadow being projected, yet remain completely ungraspable by the emotional content of the attack. Your integrity is maintained not by fighting the attack, but by recognizing its true, empty nature. This is the first step towards integrating your superior perception, shifting your relationship with the external world from that of a perpetually wounded victim to that of a mindful observer who is simply registering facts without accepting the emotional debt they imply. However, the external challenge of the scapegoat is only half the battle. The truly devastating work remains internal, addressing the deep, terrifying dissolution of identity caused by the incessant absorption of others' feelings. Jung's participation mystique. When you are constantly overwhelmed by the anxieties and desires of your environment, the question of who am I becomes existentially terrifying. The high price you paid in childhood, your inner voices, now almost inaudible beneath the clamor of the collective unconscious you carry. We must, therefore, turn to the principles of right, mindfulness, samsati, to consciously rebuild the psychological boundaries that have become dangerously permeable. The practice of conscious differentiation must move from the abstract, external conflict to the physical, internal experience. The perceptive person must learn to use solitude, not as an escape from the world, but as a laboratory for the self. This involves a radical commitment to a daily practice of mindfulness, where the primary task is to discern what belongs to me and what belongs to others. When you sit in stillness, you must observe the emotional landscape of your inner world. If you feel sudden grief, you do not immediately claim it. Instead, you hold it up for inspection, consciously labeling it. Anxiety is present. Sorrow is present. Whose sorrow is this? The deliberate act of asking this question interrupts the automatic, unconscious absorption. Jung taught this as conscious discrimination, and it is the necessary first phase of the individuation process for the highly perceptive, establishing what belongs to you and what belongs to the vast, turbulent ocean of the collective unconscious. Without this fundamental act of discrimination, there can be no self and no possibility of freedom. This process of conscious internal differentiation is slow, often painful, but essential. It involves acknowledging the terrifying reality that much of the suffering you carry is not authentic to your core self, but is the residue of unlived lives and unacknowledged pain absorbed from others. To heal, the self must be meticulously reclaimed, piece by piece, from the collective. This reclaiming is the beginning of true self-compassion, a concept that runs counter to the parentification mandate. The inner child was taught that giving is the only way to be worthy. The integrated adult must learn that receiving rest, forgiveness, self-kindness is not a luxury, but the absolute foundation of conscious existence. The superior perception will continue to flow, but only a mind that is deeply rooted in its own self-compassion can bear to see everything without being destroyed by it. To achieve this, a perceptive individual must finally drop the heaviest piece of armor, the one placed on the inner child, and embrace the radical kindness of metta. First and foremost, for the self that was sacrificed. This internal liberation is the necessary prerequisite before one can offer their clear sight as a gift to the world. The ultimate goal is to move from unconscious absorption and malakazina reaction to conscious observation and wisdom. The weight of the unintegrated self is the invisible armor we discussed assembled through the constant personalization of others' actions. The core Buddhist teachings provide the tools for the disassembly of this armor, primarily through the realization of a non-self. The ego's most persistent craving, its deepest is the desire to be a fixed, unchanging, and importantly, personalized entity in the world. When someone acts carelessly, the ego instantly claims the event. This was done to me. Therefore, I must react and defend myself. The perceptive individual's suffering is amplified because they see the chaotic causes the other person's pain, the system's flaw, but cling to the effect, the personal offense. The truth is that the external event, the harsh word, the broken promise is empty of inherent, self-directed malice. The person who commits the slight is driven by a complex web of their own suffering, fear and ignorance that existed long before you entered their field of vision. They are simply a product of causes and conditions, and their action, while impacting you, is not fundamentally about you. To realize this emptiness is to immediately withhold the glue that holds the invisible armor together. The piece of armor that was about to be added, I was intentionally disrespected, has nothing left to cling to, and it harmlessly falls away. This realization is the practical application of right view Samdhi. For the highly conscious mind, right view is seeing things yathbhuta adasana as they truly are. For the perceptive, this means seeing the external world not as a battlefield aimed specifically at them, but as a vast, impersonal flow of cause and effect. The constant threat of shadow projection from the collective is neutralized when the perceiver recognizes the projection as a mere symptom of the collective's sickness, not a factual assessment of their own character. When a colleague lashes out and calls you judgmental, the perceptive mind must learn to hear two things simultaneously: the sound of the word and the sound of their own mind's non-reaction. The practice is to maintain a still, unwavering psychological container around the self, allowing the projected content to bounce harmlessly off. You acknowledge the sound, you register the dysfunction, but you refuse the emotional and cognitive obligation to internalize the blame. The armor cannot be built if the psychic energy is withheld. The second profound Buddhist principle essential for the perceptive individual is anicca, impermanence. The perceptive individual, often a compulsive fixer due to the trauma of parentification, is driven by a desperate, often unconscious, need to stabilize the chaos they see. They try to mend the broken marriage, fix the dysfunctional organization, or awaken the sleeping friend. This is the ego's craving for control, the illusion that if one only works hard enough, one can stop the natural, chaotic flow of change. However, as Jung observed, your greatest strength, seeing the pattern, becomes your greatest burden, the compulsion to interrupt the pattern. The exhaustion is terminal because the world itself is defined by anicca. Everything is in flux, nothing is fixed. And the suffering you try to halt is an inherent part of the current condition. The practice here is the wisdom of the muddy river. The perceptive individual must learn to see the deeply muddied waters of the collective unconscious, but also realize that their job is not to clean the water, but to wait patiently for it to clear itself. True wisdom, prajna, is the capacity to observe the process without interference. This realization liberates the self from the unbearable burden of total responsibility. You are free to simply see the pattern of decay, the seeds of future conflict, or the quiet breakdown of a system without instantly feeling the internal mandate to fix it. When the compulsion to intervene rises, the perceptive mind consciously labels it. This is the compulsion to fix. This is the parentification mandate. I will observe it, but I will not be driven by it. By allowing the world to move according to its own chaotic causes and conditions, the individual stops rowing frantically against the vast current of anicca, and thus stops adding pieces of the frustration armor and the exhaustion armor to their core self. This leads us to the critical work of right mindfulness, samsade, the essential tool for rebuilding the self and overcoming identity dissolution. The permeable boundary means the perceptive individual is constantly carrying the luggage of others. The antidote is to turn the keen perception inward, using the same powerful discernment that sees the external world to meticulously chart the internal landscape. The practice of mindfulness here is not mere relaxation. It is a rigorous act of psychological surveillance conscious discrimination between self and other. When the feeling of sorrow or anxiety arises, the individual must pause and utilize the powerful discrimination, Jung's first phase of individuation. Discriminate and contain. I am sensing intense fear. Is this fear a direct result of my actions in the last hour? Or did I absorb it after reading that text message sitting near that person? By deliberately asking this question, the unconscious process of absorption is brought into the light of consciousness. The highly perceptive mind must create an internal laboratoria, space of solitude where absorbed external content is consciously labeled, acknowledged, and gently expelled, or at least compartmentalized, rather than integrated as part of the self. This is the moment where the self begins to be reclaimed, piece by piece, from the collective unconscious, laying the foundation for true psychological integrity. The ultimate liberation of the perceptive mind, however, is found in metta loving-kindness and karua, compassion. The person who sees everything often feels isolated, resentful, and intellectually superior to the unconscious masses. This internal posture of judgment is the final, most sophisticated piece of armor, the superiority armor that must be dissolved. Metta transforms the power of clear sight from a weapon of judgment into a gift of understanding. When you see a person acting from their shadow, you no longer see malice. You see the deep, painful cause of their action. You see that their bitterness is the result of their own unintegrated suffering. This compassionate perspective, rooted in metta, fundamentally alters the relationship between the perceptive self and the aggressor. The anger melts away because you realize they are not your enemy. They are simply a suffering being whose psychological pain has manifested as a hurtful action. When the attack comes, the integrated mind meets it not with retaliation, but with the quiet wish, may this being be free from their suffering. This is not weakness. This is the ultimate psychic defense. By refusing to engage in the cycle of blame and personal offense, you deny the attacker power over your internal state. Your clear perception is now used not to wound or judge, but to locate the source of the suffering in the self. Or on the other hand, apply the appropriate remedy of acceptance and kindness. This is the transition from the isolated, burdened victim to the conscious pioneer, ready to offer their integrated wisdom as a conscious contribution to the evolution of the whole. The first pillar is conscious differentiation and boundary reconstruction. This directly addresses Jung's first phase of integration and the core Buddhist practice of right mindfulness, samsoti. It's particularly crucial for overcoming participation mystique. Since the perceptive mind's boundaries are porous, a legacy of having to absorb parental emotions during parentification, the most urgent task is to consciously establish what is mine and what is merely absorbed external content. The practical technique for this is the daily psychic decanting. Dedicate a non-negotiable period of absolute solitude each day, a silent sitting practice, or a meditative walk. During this time, the goal is not to empty the mind, but to conduct a meticulous inventory of the emotional and mental cargo you are carrying. When you notice a persistent feeling, anxiety, defensiveness, or resentment, you do not immediately claim it as my feeling. Instead, you consciously create an internal container and label the content. Following a process of elimination, I feel intense professional inadequacy. Did this feeling arise from my own work today? Or was it absorbed from the fear I sensed in my coworker yesterday? By deliberately refusing to integrate the feeling until its source is verified, you interrupt the automatic absorption mechanism. This is the conscious practice of separation. You are using the same superior perception that created the problem to now solve it, meticulously peeling away layers of the collective unconscious to reveal the small, authentic self underneath. This daily decanting is the only way to avoid identity, dissolution, and ensure that your authentic psychological voice remains audible. The second pillar is shadow integration through radical self-compassion. Jung stressed that those who see the shadows of others most clearly often do so because they have not integrated their own. The more fiercely you deny your own capacity for selfishness, imperfection, or failure, the more violently you will react when you see these traits reflected in others. This is why the perceived attacks become so personal and why the resentment armor is so easy to assemble. The Buddhist antidote to this self-cruelty and external projection is karua, compassion. Beginning with the self, the technique here is the forgiveness protocol of the inner child, the compulsive fixer archetype. Born from parentification, demands impossible perfection, and views mistakes as moral failures. To break this cycle, the perceptive individual must actively and consciously forgive the self that was forced to be a perfect child. During moments of quiet reflection, bring the image of your younger self to mind and offer the phrases of loving kindness. May I be kind to the self that had to grow up too fast. May I forgive the self that failed to fix things it could not control. May I be free from the burden of perfection. This practice transforms the relationship with your own shadow. When you acknowledge that you also contain every human quality, the capacity for anger, the need for rest, the moments of selfishness, you become a complete person, not a perfect one. This internal acceptance allows you to view the shadow projection of others with a neutral, compassionate eye. The shadow attack loses its fuel because you are no longer defending the illusion of your own perfection. You can see their imperfection and you can accept your own, rendering the attack harmless. The third pillar is conscious participation and strategic engagement. This addresses the paradox of isolation and the dangers of the compulsion to fix. The integrated self does not withdraw entirely, but engages with the world from a position of mindful power, not obligation. The practical technique for engagement is the gradual revelation and conscious offering. The perceptive individual must learn to treat their insights as a valuable, potent offering, not a compulsory, exhausting declaration. Jung emphasized the importance of finding the few who understand. The practice here involves 1. Assessing the container before offering a deep insight. Ask, does this person or situation have the psychological capacity to hold this truth without becoming defensive shadow projection? 2. Framing as an offering, not a pronouncement, instead of stating, you are unconsciously sabotaging your own success. Frame it as, I notice a recurring pattern here, and I wonder if it serves a purpose. This invites curiosity rather than triggering defense. 3. The wisdom of silence, non-intervention. The most crucial practice is the conscious decision not to speak. The integrated mind understands that clarity is not a mandate for action. You see the dysfunctional pattern, you register the truth, and then you consciously choose to remain silent, trusting the principle of anicca to play out. Your most profound contribution is often the maintenance of your own integrated presence, which acts as a quiet, non-judgmental light that invites others to wake up when they are ready, rather than being force-fed truth when they are not. This liberates you from the draining cycle of fighting battles that were never yours to win. By mastering these 3 pillars: differentiation, mindfulness, shadow integration, self-compassion, conscious participation, strategic silence, The individual transitions from a victim of superior perception to an integrated pioneer of consciousness. The terrifying for dangers of Part 1 are neutralized. Identity dissolution is replaced by a fortified sense of self. Scapegoating is met with compassionate neutrality. Isolation is tempered by strategic, meaningful connections. And the compulsion to fix is transformed into the wisdom of purposeful non-intervention. This integration allows your profound insight to become the culture carrier Jung envisioned. A conscious contribution to the collective, no longer a private, destructive curse. The final task is to look toward the horizon, the transcendent function. The state where the formerly dangerous gift becomes a conscious, sustainable contribution to the evolution of human consciousness itself. Jung believed that successful integration of superior risks perception was not merely important for personal well-being, but was psychologically urgent for the collective. He saw the perceptive individual as the culture carrier, whose personal psychological development precedes and foreshadows the necessary development of humanity. The anxiety, the exhaustion, and the isolation you experienced were not signs of a malfunction. They were signs of an evolutionary pressure, an intense sensitivity to the collective unconscious that is still struggling to integrate its own shadows. Your personal symptoms often reflect what the entire culture eventually needs to address. The goal, therefore, is to transform the perception from a private curse into what Jung called cultural medicine. The ultimate transformation begins with the end of worth-conscious acceptance of your superior function. This is the first critical phase where the internal struggle against your own clarity ceases. You realize the difference between seeing and suffering, and you finally allow yourself to be without apology. Following this initial profound recognition, the work moves toward integration without isolation. Here, the practical tools of conscious differentiation become ingrained habits. You learn to maintain meaningful connections with others, not by lowering your perception, but by sustaining a strong, mindful center. The integrated individual does not withdraw from the world. Instead, they engage with it more consciously, discerning when to speak and, more importantly, when to maintain a strategic, compassionate silence. Knowing that their steady presence is often the most powerful form of communication, as the internal boundaries stabilize. The transformation deepens into service without sacrifice. This is the phase where the gift is now offered to the world, not from a place of obligation rooted in the parentification mandate, but from a place of psychological overflow. The shadow integration has paved the way, allowing you to use your profound insight as Keru, a compassionate action. You help others make their own unconscious conscious, not by preaching or forcing truth, but by gently reflecting their reality with deep, non-judgmental acceptance. Your integrated integrity serves as the quiet yet powerful invitation for others to begin their own awakening. This entire process culminates in the highest state of individuation, life lived with legacy without attachment. This is the transcendent function fully realized. The perceptive individual works for the future, understanding that their insights may not be accepted or even recognized in the present. They embody the profound wisdom of Anicca. Everything changes, including the immediate impact of their contributions. They see clearly, contribute authentically, yet hold their efforts lightly, free from the ego's demand for validation. The work itself becomes an act of pure presence, unburdened by compulsion or expectation. The ultimate liberation for the person who sees everything is the realization that your burden was never your perception. Your burden was your unconscious relationship to it. The exhaustion stemmed from fighting the reality of Anicca impermanence and accepting the self-inflicted wounds of Anat, non-self, which manifested as the heavy, protective, and ultimately suffocating invisible armor. The path forward is simple, yet demanding. You do not need to earn your right to rest, to be imperfect, or to choose silence. You are exactly what consciousness evolution requires. The only necessary work remaining is the conscious maintenance of your own psychological center. Utilizing the Buddhist tools of mindfulness, metta, and non-attachment to ensure your gift remains a light, not a load. The danger of seeing everything is only a danger when you fail to develop the wisdom to wield what you see. Integrate your perception consciously, and you become the bridge, the living spirit that helps the world awaken, one mindful moment at a time. Your journey from isolated survivor to conscious pioneer is the blueprint for the collective's own inevitable growth.